I'm just curious of where you're headed, which you can share with us. If anyone's actually is working in a similar field or finds collaboration avenues, what should they be actually looking after?
From the very beginning, my vision was to say that a new industrial shift that is the bioeconomy needed to be global. It is an aspiration for something better. I couldn't and I cannot think about an aspiration for something better that only focuses again on the main hub of industrial age. And let's just say that over the past industrial ages, it has always been centered around Europe and more specifically West Europe and the US. Even though some ecosystems have a lot of growth to go through.
That's awesome.
The Trillion Trees podcast hosted by Saad Allahwala. Join the movement. 1 trillion trees by 2030. Tune in for inspiring stories, groundbreaking ideas, and real solutions to tackle climate change. Listen to it. Watch every Saturday, 4 p.m. Make an impact now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new podcast that we're starting off on sustainability. So honestly, I don't really have a name for it yet, but I'm gonna keep on using the same name as before, which was called the Startup Podcast. We'll just be focusing more on sustainability now, more on uh, people who are actually in the climate and sustainability space, and talking to a lot of people that are now doing all of that. Today, we have a very special guest, Loretta, who I initially met in Davos this year in January. And even over there, her energy was amazing. We got to talk, well, quite briefly, but I accidentally ran into her again in Riyadh during Leap. And that's actually when we talked and got to know more about her. We got to talk more on text and LinkedIn. And now we're finally on a podcast where I get to learn a lot more about her. And it's not just me who's learning about her, but it's everyone who's watching to get to know about Loretta, what her journey's been like, what are her focus areas, and how she's helping improve the world, maybe a little or a lot. So let's get to know more about her. And first of all, thank you so much, Loretta, for giving us your time. I know you've been traveling, and I think you're even traveling right now. So again, just thank you so much for taking out the time in between.
Of course, of course. Very super happy to be able to finally make that podcast. We've been talking about it for quite some time now. So happy to follow through. So my name is Loretta Tioiela. I'm the founder and managing partner of Next Sequence. Next Sequence is a new emerging investment firm based in the US, and we're focusing on investing in AI and bio startups at the pre-seed seed stage level, with the idea of bringing them all the way back to Series A. So we have had the chance now to work with the first cohort of startup in 2024, and we're looking forward to working with more startups in 2025.
That's awesome. When you talk about startups in the biotech space and AI space, what are some key business if you could just define that a little bit more, but I mean, yes, it's pretty defined, but it still seems a little vague. What are some investments that you guys might have already done, or something that you specifically look into for in businesses that can then reach out and then to work with you guys?
I think to be able to answer that question, you need a little bit of background on me personally. I'm an engineer. I spent 15 years in tech, working on architecture, platform, and building from pre-cloud to all the way to cloud services. I've been in AI for 10 years now. So um, my focus 5 years ago was to look for something that would make sense, at least for my own personal journey. And for me, that was turning the knowledge, the network, the understanding that I built in tech to applying it to biotech, because it was where I felt there was the most impact. So when I started, I was focusing exclusively on neuroscience, and I was looking for a way to kind of leverage my knowledge in AI to support a startup that was working on Alzheimer's disease. They were using blood biomarkers at that time to kind of create a device that would allow for early detection of onset of Alzheimer's disease. And my job was to assist them in terms of infrastructure access, as I was the cloud service provider, chief product officer at that time, but also to put up a team that would work on the algorithm view of the data they had access to. And so very quickly, we kind of realized that um, it was almost an impossible battle for us to fight, because the data and the quality of the data that was provided to us was nowhere near enough for us to actually build an algorithm that would be uh, good enough to be able to be validated in prediction. We realized the complexity of that ecosystem. You have different key stakeholders. You have pharmaceutical companies that are actually driving and financing a lot of these clinical trials. You have the clinician and practitioner that are actually the one that actually have the scientific knowledge to be able to identify a cohort of patients that potentially could fall into these clinical trials. You have the hospital within which these clinicians most of the time work, and that manage the information system upon which all of these data are actually created. And so that creates a lot of complexity that makes it hyper fragmented, with not necessarily a common understanding and agreement in terms of format or tools that are being used. And that prevents for the kind of level of fluidity that we need to be able to build robust data set that would unlock a lot of the application of computing techniques, such as machine learning techniques, to fast forward the research. And so that really kind of hooked me up, because at that time, neuroscience was not necessarily something that I had picked randomly. I was already preparing to be able to leave my executive job to enter a PhD program. My PhD focus was actually to be in neuroscience, and I was specifically looking to build up computer brain interfaces. And so when I noticed that there was actually fundamentally something wrong in that element, I realized that although I was looking forward to my own research in BCI, that wouldn't change the entire status of the ecosystem in itself. And so I started to get a little bit more and more interested into that. And that was end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And of course, as you all know, within a couple of months of me leaving for to start my PhD, COVID happened, and that kind of derailed pretty much everything. So I think that, like most of the people with computer skill, we got reassigned. Actually, at that point, I was already working in one of the biggest, largest optical trust in Paris and in Europe, and I was working in biobanking, and so I was already there to be able to assist in the support of fighting against COVID. And so, like most of us, we decided to put our computer skill at the disposal of the hospitals for them to actually sort through the huge amount of data that were being generated. And this kind of fast forward what was already early onset on me understanding what were kind of the main blockers in that industry, in that ecosystem. And so it helped me along the way refine where I felt I could actually have my own personal impact. So along the following months leading to that, I decided more specifically that I wanted to work more closely on the startup side rather than on the pharmaceutical or hospital side, because this felt where I could actually have the pace of innovation that I was after, that would allow me first to get a better understanding at this ecosystem, because it's a very complex ecosystem, and I think it would have been kind of bold and maybe arrogant for me to kind of pretend to want to show something that I was barely new in, and also at the same time develop a sense of where was going to be my next move in terms of impact. So this is how I started, and in order to be able to do that, I think the the easiest analogy was for me to realize that I could see in the bio the same level of struggling that I'd seen 15 years before when I was starting in software, meaning that there was a very strong fragmentation and isolation of data and a fight in between open and closed, proprietary versus open. And for me, the analogy was we needed to have the same kind of approach and what I've worked in computing. That was the need for us to create open framework on which the entire ecosystem could build and could align in terms of format, in terms of tooling. And I was just thinking about it in terms of computing perspective because this is my background and this is where I felt I could contribute. And so, of course, the way that I was looking at it was necessarily through the eye of the computer engineer. And so, with
What
that in mind, I set up to create a non-for-profit, Open Symbio, that was created for one
what was it
purpose.
called? Sorry.
It was Open Symbio. And so OpenSymbio as a non-for-profit was created for one purpose alone. It was created as a non-for-profit computing foundation. So just like the same model as the Linux Foundation, a foundation dedicated to software engineering in the context of biology, where the goal was to kind of first create a community of people that thought just like us that the future of biology and innovation in biology was going to be very closely linked to innovation and the ability to bring software engineering tools into the development of bio in general. And once that community would be built up, be able to start agreeing on data format sharing, on a common software engineering tool that we were all using basically. So with that in mind, we kind of started to build up the community first because it starts and it ends with the community. And so
Yeah.
it, it resonated very, very, very quickly because within a couple of months, we had more than 400 startups ranging from pre-seed stage all the way to Series D, all agreeing and embracing this vision because this was already what they were doing. So it kind of served as a way for us to realize that our initial gut feeling was not just a gut feeling, but it was really something that was happening out there in the ecosystem that no one were really specifically talking about, but that people were doing because it was, uh, a on fire problem. It was something very important that everyone was trying to tackle. And so with that, within a year, we've built more than 1,000 startups and it kept growing organically. But within a year also, we realized that the main drawback that kept coming back and again and again for talking with each one of these startups was basically the need for financing, because everyone was struggling with financing. And more than the need for financing, also the need for, again, that kind of convergence in between different players around at least very common tools and data format. And so we couldn't actually necessarily tackle it down from the very beginning, the need for common data format, because it's a very complex issue that actually require different subsidiary actually community to form. When you work on data format for drugs and therapeutics, it's not going to do the same as for biomanufacturing. It's not going to to be the same need for climate startups or even for food and agriculture startups. And so we realized that we were set on something that was maybe a little bit too big for us and bigger than that what we originally anticipated. But we kind of tried to chew at it a small bit at one at a time. And so the easiest way that we could get started was for us to look at the financing part.
Yeah.
And so the financing part, although it's not an easy part, was a way more straightforward way to kind of approach the problem. And so we decided to create Next Sequence for that purpose only, to create it as an investment firm that will be able to support and invest into pre-seed seed startup. And so we incorporated in 2022. Now, um, when I'm looking backward, I realize how naive it was, because even if it was a very straightforward path for us, at least in the way that we saw it, we didn't account for the fact that actually building an investment firm is a lot of work. It's not that easy as you might think. So it took us a long time, all the way in between 2022 and 2024, meaning right now. And right now, we're finally making our first wave of investment, because we have one Series A and a couple of pre-seed seed investment that we are now finally making. But it took us all that time to kind of really be able to reach a first stage where we could actually accomplish what we envisioned with. And there's still a lot to build. But in the way that we're looking at startup right now, that means that the focus and where we started has always been deeply technical. And so that means that in the way that we built the investment firm and the way that we've been focusing and operating on, we've been very technology centric, meaning that what we care about is our startups are leveraging computing in general. So most of the time, these are AI startups that are leveraging AI for biotech innovation, but it's not just AI. We have a couple of startups that we've been monitoring that are doing quantum bio. And so it's not really about the technology in itself. It's really about the fact that these startups understand the power of data and understand that now we have with computing the necessary tool available to actually radically change the way that we're doing research. And so we're looking, and we are more specifically interested into the new kind of biotech startup that understand that kind of paradigm shift enough to kind of want to do it at the same time. Now, we know that this is definitely not an easy feat, and this is also why, following up to that, we've been building a lot of things to kind of support startups into doing that. But the starting point is to be the founders need to have this vision that computing and bio together can actually do a lot of things. And then that means that by default, we're not actually um, vertical centric. We are actually totally horizontal. And so that means that in the pool of startup that we've seen coming and that we've been willing to work with, we've seen startup in biomanufacturing, in climate tech, working on food or in agriculture, at a different level. We have now more and more also startups into consumer goods, because biotech has also impact in everything, not
Right.
just drugs and therapeutics, but also in consumer goods. So we have startups in fashion, we have startups in retail in general, we have startups also now in cosmetic products. So it's really a broad field, and I would say that the best way to describe what's happening is really what the McKinsey report actually said, meaning the bio revolution is going to be the next big fundamental industrial age that we're going to be entering. And that means that everything that human being consume or produce can be resolved through biology. And I think that that describes the best what we've seen on the ground, because most of the startup that we see can be really applied in any kind of category. And you have really amazing innovation that happen on the fringe on things that you wouldn't even thought bio and biotech would be applicable to. But it's really about we're changing and we're wiring the way that we're thinking about it and we think about it. Everything that we touch more or less right now is all linked to petrochemicals. It's all plastic. And if you think about it and you think about what that would be looking like if you were replacing it with something that would be bioengineer, well, you have your new way of innovation. So that's in a nutshell what we've been looking at and focusing on.
That was a lot, but I think that's really awesome that you are in the biospace, and bioscience and biotech, everything around biology. Um, I do have one question, because you went from, I mean, you've changed careers so much. So, I mean, you went from physics towards biology. You mentioned even engineering. computer science. How did you actually end up? I mean, if you do, of course. I mean, I'm just assuming. But how did you end up loving biology so much? I mean, personally, I love it a lot because everything revolves. Every element that we have, even this laptop that I have, there is so many biological elements that have to be um calculated and that have to be produced to actually produce even a laptops, even for the LCD screen used to have it was all just so many chemicals inside. um but me personally, it is such an amazing space, and it's a very growing economy. You mentioned even plastics and petroleum. um Biology has to do a lot, and biotech companies have to do a lot to contribute towards um even changing how we do things today with our consumer goods, and which guys are also working on, and I mean, companies that are part of your not for profit. So I mean, my personally question this, I mean, it might not be so relevant, but how did you fall so much in love with biology and biotech?
I think what you are referring to when you're talking about your laptop and everything that actually encompass a laptop and the silicon, I think you're referring to the matter in itself, and that is, of course, not biology. That is physics, and I think that in itself you illustrate that a bit of every one of us have uh, a love or a connection to life in a way. So it can be to different extent, to different sensitivity. And I think that that's by definition is part of human nature, the need to understand, the curiosity, and the sensitivity to things that happen. Now things that happen can happen at different levels. They can happen at the physical level, and a lot of VCs for some time use the reference to atoms, and so they were referring on investing into atoms and everything related to atoms, because they were referring to investment thesis that was really strongly focused on innovation on the fridge, leveraging fundamental physics law. But I think that behind the word, or behind the big hype that sometimes we can give to things, it's all rolled back to a sensitivity to things. And so for some of us, it's at the physics level. For some of us, it would be more related to really not just the matters that happens, but the matters that happens for biological component, which is of course a bit of physics, but not just, and that's what makes it beautiful. And I think that in my case, I always had a love for physics and mathematics and biology. It's just more than 20 years ago, there was no path forward for that. So when I was a student, I was asked actually to choose my specialty because there was no path where I could be a specialist in both math and both physics and both biology. Now, that comes to say that I would say that this maybe used to be the case 20 years ago, but it is not the case anymore. And it's a testament to the fact that you should always pursue your dreams and your passion, and not really let anyone tell you that there isn't a category for what you are into. Well, maybe there isn't, maybe there is, and maybe there will be. Because ironically, I left physics more than 15 years ago. And this year, the Nobel Prize of Physics was actually given to someone that actually worked at the crossroad in between AI and bio, because it's
Wow.
the AlphaFold project and the use of machine learning techniques applied to protein engineering. And so that gives you an idea of, even if the world tells you that you're on the wrong track or that it's not what it is, ultimately what matters more is really for you to really build your own path. So in my case, I never thought that I would go back to physics, and I never thought for sure that I would ever study bio. Things kind of unfolded the way that they unfolded because I kept doing two things primarily. Either I was in survival mode, and in survival mode, I think you don't get to choose, and so you get to just keep playing again, and you just do it until you are not into survival mode. And in my case, I was in survival mode for many, many years. And then as soon as I was not in survival mode, it was about making decision on what really mattered to me. And the very few time when I get to make this decision, I picked wisely enough to be able to be on the right track. So along the way, a path is for 20, 15, 20 years, I kind of in between the survival mode and the very few time when I had to really choose, made the good decision enough to be able to finally end up where I am right now, where when you look back to it, it seems impressive because I'm trained to understand technologies both in physics and computing, and now training in bio. But it was never really kind of a plan, or it was never something that I forethought or that I strategically maneuver around. I just kept being making decision based on one simple idea of always sticking to what really matters to me at the end of the day.
Awesome. No, that is you're absolutely right about um working on things that actually do matter to us. And it's really inspiring to see your journey where initially your path being limited and now you were really working on something big. So if I ask you about your bringing up and where were you born, which country did you are you actually brought up in, and how did you make the journey all the way to San Francisco now?
Mhm. Yeah, so San Francisco is really new. I decided to move to San Francisco around October of this year for the demo day, and I'm still in the process of moving. And it's definitely not an easy move because I'm actually a single mother, so I have a lot of constraint that I need to take care of. But it has been amazing, nonetheless, and it's definitely not something that I regret. Definitely, I think what I like to say the most is people like me don't do what I do, meaning that people that grew up dirt poor, with very challenged family, where just like a lot of families that are actually, growing poverty and suffering a lot, dealing with alcoholism or even uh, domestic violence. People like me very seldomly rise up to become venture capitalists and move to San Francisco. But in retrospect, it's not like it's definitely not an easy journey or a nice success story. It's still something in the making. But yes, I can also acknowledge the fact that I'm actually very grateful. So I grew up in a small island that actually belonged to France in the Indian Ocean. My island is actually called Rainian Island. And I was born and raised there. And I moved away to come and study in Paris very early on. I was 17 when I left. So I
Wow.
was not even I was not even legally allowed to sign up my own apartment lease. And so I left and came to study, and my specialty at that time was actually mathematics. So I entered prep school, specialized in mathematics. And along the way, I've navigated my way from mathematics all the way to physics, and specialize in physics. And I decided to go to the university and to some of the biggest research institutions to specialize in physics. And the more I was progressing and the more it was becoming more and more difficult because I couldn't actually um, really count on family financial support. And so the more I was studying and the more I realized that my study will take much longer and longer. And the more I realized that I was not supposed to do that because basically I had no way of sustaining myself. And working on the side was taking everything out of me in terms of health and ability to really focus on my work. So I worked another job as long as I could until I fell sick. And at that point, I had no choice anymore. I was way too sick to be able to work, way too sick to be able to study. And I had to be very pragmatic about what was going to be my next option. And my next option was actually no options. It was about surviving, as I was mentioning before. And so I went on and I decided to switch to computing as a way to support myself, but also as a way to kind of still keep connecting to what I desired. And at that point, um, my field of specialty was actually gravitational waves and black holes. And I saw that I might not able to be able to do the research myself, but I could actually create the computational element that was going to be required to do that. But for that, I needed to understand computing much more than the very early on programming classes that I was going through. And so shifting to computing seemed like a very logical step with that logic. Of course, it didn't happen the way it happened because I needed to learn everything from the bottom up on computing. And so I spent the next 10 years actually more thinking and doing computing than actually caring much about how this will affect or help in any way gravitational waves. But it did start like this, and actually, my thesis on uh, my first year of computing was actually dedicated to using my physics knowledge to build up an estimate of what it would look like if we were to create an internet, a space internet, actually connection where we could actually basically transfer information from space all the way to Earth. So basically, what Starlink is doing now. At
Well,
that time, people said it was kind of crazy. That was in uh, 2004.
wow.
Uh, and I was, of course, very happy and satisfied to see SpaceX and Starlink many years later coming to what they are right now, because it proved that I was not that crazy after all. So this is how it started. And then, as I said, along the way, I spent 15 years in computing and just learning my trade, learning my skill. Computing is actually extremely fascinating because for someone that is very curious, it keeps always changing. So I keep learning. And I think along the way I got lost because I kept learning and learning for the sake of learning. But 10 years ago, I kind of really got hooked on AI. And I think that my shift to AI 10 years ago kind of really brought me back to what I really want to do originally. And so one thing led to another. As I was mentioning, I led me to the work on bio and then shifting from tech to investment.
That is awesome. No, you've had so many changes that you've just mentioned. I think only on a brief podcast, but um, it really is inspiring to see all that you're doing, um, how you've done it, and the twists and dramas. Um, moving forward, if I want to learn more about, so you mentioned that you guys were just in the progress of making an investment, and on your LinkedIn, I even noticed another biotech company that was also making hardware, I believe. Just want to learn more about your plans for, let's say, the next 2 to 3 years, or whether it's investment or whether it's your focus areas. Because in the past few months that I've talked to you and we've been in communication, you've been traveling around and hopping around all over. So just I'm just curious of where you're headed, which you can share with us. And if anyone's actually is working in a similar field or finds collaboration avenues, what should they be actually looking after?
Yeah, of course. So from the very beginning, my vision was to say that this new industrial shift, that is the bioeconomy, needed to be global. the reason why we are so much open into the bioeconomy is because we're trying to solve some of the very strong planetary and humanitarian issue that we have, whether it is from an health perspective or whether it is from a climate perspective. And so it is an aspiration for something better. And so I cannot think about an aspiration for something better that only focuses again on the main past industrial ages. It has always been centered around Europe, and more specifically West Europe and the US. And so from the very beginning, my view was the bioeconomy revolution needed to be global. And so if we were to do what we're doing and contribute in a small way, we needed also to have this very inclusive vision. Now, I think that after 2 years and all the struggles, um, suffice to say that it's a strong statement to make, because from a Parisian perspective, it can either make or break your company. And I think that for us, there's definitely been a lot to do that, because doing that is required for us to travel extensively across all of the geographics. And of course, at the personal level, I had already a good take on different geographics, because I grew up in a very diverse culture where um, Southeast Asia was actually at the core of what I knew as a child as growing up. And so early on in my career, I moved to Singapore and I lived in Southeast Asia for a couple of years. And so it was easy for me to kind of uh, dig into that knowledge to kind of develop a sense of how the ecosystem was actually moving, because I had a network and understanding. Because I'm a European and work also for American company, I had this sense of what was happening in Europe and the US. But it really took a toll on me to really kind of expand myself to go and beyond that original setup to really get to discover each one of these geographics. So as soon as we were incorporated in 2022, we started this notion of road shows that we've been running ever since, where the goal was for us to go to each one of the target ecosystem that we knew we're going to have to work with and we wanted to work with, to kind of see where they were instead in the maturity level, who were the actual people leading the way in this ecosystem. Because I think the core of what we're doing is we complete, we do not compete. Our job is not to come and dominate an ecosystem. It's actually to enhance and collaborate with the people that know that ecosystem better than us. And so it was about building that understanding, building that network, and building that rationale about us also assessing at which investment level we were going to be operating, what kind of operational level we would be setting up in each one of the ecosystem. And so in 2023, we started in Latin America, where we went in Chile, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina. And we really took the time to meet a lot of VCs, a lot of people from government, and meet the startups that we could meet at the time, and keep building on that to further on, later on, still growing our knowledge of the startups in this ecosystem. And we did the same again and again over the last past 2 years and a half. And so in 2023, we went to East Africa, to Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, all the way to South Africa. We did the same thing for the Middle East, and this is the beginning of how I landed up in the Gulf region, and leading to us meeting this year in Riyadh. And so this year, I've been very focused to going back to some of the countries that I know best in Asia and Southeast Asia. And we're finally wrapping up these road shows, because we think that we have enough information now to kind of move ahead and know where we want to contribute, who are the partners we want to work with. But in every time, I think what has been the most interesting for us was really to discover an amazing layout of investment for VCs, some advanced, some less advanced, ecosystem builders, accelerator programs, incubators, all trying to push into the right direction because it gives us a lot of hope for the future in the fact that even though some ecosystem have a lot of growth to go through, there's still amazing talent, amazing founders that need whatever help and support they can get. And so happy to be able to work with each one of these ecosystem builders and investors to really try to support these founders. And so now um, the key would be for us to decide what we do with all of this information next year. And so for now, this is the reason why we are being very silent. We've been building towards the next program planning and discussing about the details of how we want to operate it and what we're changing compared to the first iteration of the program, and trying to find the right line in between what we aspire to do and I think what is actually doable for us at this level of maturity for ourselves also. But it has definitely been a full circle coming together for us now. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward, scared, sure, definitely. But also excited and definitely looking forward to what we're building for 2025 for sure.
That is extremely exciting and on for me exciting. I'm sure a little, as you said, a little scary for you as well. But um, again, really excited for all these stories to be coming out and what your work's gonna be. Um, I think that pretty much wraps up what I was curious about and what I was thinking. But for everyone in the audience, Loretta is an amazing lady. She's been in communication even with me, so I'm not really doing so much as she is. But we keep on learning from her, and I would really like that everyone who is in the bioscience. So just to mention here, um, even so, I'm in my studio right now. Even in this studio, I helped one of my friends who is a bioscience student to start a podcast on bioscience. So she runs a podcast called Biotalks, and the whole purpose is that the bioscience community over here is very disconnected. And here being currently Pakistan, where I am uh, at the moment at the studio, um, and they for her the same problem existed that for us. I come from a business family. We never really got to find people who were in the working in the bioscience space who could help us engineer more products that were more sustainable. My family office still again invests everywhere, which has to do something to do with sustainability. So we don't do anything anymore. None of our expansions go towards a business that would be bad for the environment. So that is like our top priority. People like her, people like you, there just seems to be such a large gap. But I just hope, and I will definitely try to make more of an effort, me personally as well, that this gaps gets diluted more and more, and more people start more collaboration and focusing on the point that you also mentioned that we don't really need to reinvent anymore. We just need more people working, understanding each other, collaborating. So the great work that people are inventing, that people have solutions, and the people who have to execute, implement, they can collaborate. And of course, that will create more business where, of course, you come in again as an investor and are doing that. Um, I'm really excited for your journey. I hope um, I put things in the right way and did not confuse biotech again. But uh, again, thank you so much for your time. If there's anything that you might want to add before we end this podcast, please do.
No, thank you. I think thank you for the opportunity. When we met, it opened my eyes also for us to include Pakistan as one of the hub that we should actually spend some more time with. So it was actually very nice to have the opportunities through meeting you to kind of dig around a little bit, and definitely looking forward to be able.
We again still invite you, and I'm sure after this podcast, so many more people will be inviting you to Pakistan. Come try the food, but also come see what we're actually doing over here. Um,
Yeah.
only in Pakistan, I believe there's more than 100 startup incubators, and a lot of them that I have visited, a lot of people are working on biotech products. So some people. I mean, personally, not being an expert, I don't know how to put it the right way, but if that's something that would help you attract you towards Pakistan, I will definitely make that effort. But again, people who are in that space will definitely be reaching out soon, I'm sure, more and more. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
So yeah, as it was mentioning, there's a lot of incubators in Pakistan, and so yeah, I definitely looking forward to getting a sense of what these incubators are actually working on, and being able to see in what way we can actually support. But indeed, it confirms what we already know and we've been witnessing on the ground for the last few years. There is pocket of innovation pretty much everywhere. The question is not really do we have innovation, but more how do we come together to kind of really help these founders actually break through with the challenges that they are meeting. So definitely looking forward.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time for the podcast. Um,
Sure.
and I'm really looking forward to meeting you again. Are you coming to Davos this year?
I don't know yet.
Right.
I'm scheduled to be at Davos, but I will most likely make some very tough decision when it comes to my traveling schedule in the coming weeks.
Okay.
So I don't.
Well, again, so if not there, then somewhere else. But I would definitely want to catch up with you again, and take this all of this collaboration forward. If I can do any more on this, and thank you so much, man.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Saad. Thank you to the team and to the audience, and looking forward to the next event. Bye.
Bye.